I am Corey Hitchens. I'm with the West Grove Avondale Rotary Club, past president and board member, and there's somebody that we wanted to introduce you to.
Hi, my name is Jill Hardy. I'm Gold Star mother of Corporal Brandon Hardy, killed in action April 28, 2006 in Al Anbar, Iraq.
So where did Brandon grow up? You guys are from around here, right?
We are Chester County. Brandon grew up in Cochranville. We've lived in Cochranville all our life. Attended Octorara School District and until he left for the Air Force, lived in Chester County all his life.
Okay, so what was Brandon like as a kid? Social?
Oh, very social. His teachers would tell me that all the time.
I was just saying, my mom, so when I was in school, I was terrible. So my teachers wouldn't say the same thing. So the teachers loved him?
The teachers loved him. He went to school to learn, but he loved to have fun, and he did in school.
So did he play any sports?
He did Little League. He played up through grade 10 at school. He played baseball. Loved Penn State football. Never played, but was an avid fan. Watched every game they played.
As a mother, I know that there's always stories that moms love to tell about their kids. So is there a story in particular that stands out that would shed some light on what Brandon was like as a kid?
As a kid, he loved and respected his grandfather, who was a World War II veteran, and he stayed with them once a week while I worked, and he would play with Pep on the playground all the time and make up rules as he went, and would change the rules as he went so that he was always the winner at the end of the game or whatever it was they were playing. Brandon loved life. As he grew up, he just loved to have fun, and his fun wasn't always the same as mine. He always liked to mess up my hair, and you don't mess up my hair, by the way. He rode bulls in the rodeo when he was in the Air Force. He thought that was fun. He's a very, very fun-loving, smile could light up the room kind of a kid, and grow into adulthood that way as well.
So his grandfather was a World War II vet. Would he talk about his experiences in? Was he one of those people that expressed things, or would he kind of keep them in? Or?
He pretty much kept them in until later in life, and then he and Brandon would share because when Brandon went to the Air Force, then they had another bond, and he would share some things with Brandon. Not so much early on when Brandon was young, but after he joined the military, he would share stories with him, because there is a bond in the military that if you're in the military, only in the military can you understand that bond.
And do you think that his grandfather was influential in any way in him joining the military?
I do. Brandon always respected him for that. Brandon was 10 when the first Gulf War, Desert Storm, was occurring. And he would watch the news, and he would sit in front of the TV at the age of 10 and say, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to serve my country in the military. Never wavered from that, never questioned it, never doubted it. So yes, I do think his grandfather had some early on influence on that, and then just watching the news coverage at the age of 10.
And he joined the military right out of high school?
He did. He graduated on June the 11th, 1999, and left for Air Force Basic Training on July the 6th, 1999.
Okay. And what was his MOS when he was in the Air Force?
He was in supplies. He would make sure the planes were loaded, spare parts if they needed anything. That plane had everything it needed to fly. Brandon was responsible for getting that stuff on there.
And he was deployed a few times.
Three times
he was in the
Air Force. He went to Saudi Arabia, came home 1 week exactly prior to September 11th. He went to Oman and United Arab Emirates. So he was in the Middle East 3 times.
And you said that he was, when he was in the Air Force, I guess he was down in Texas, right?
He was.
So he got drawn to riding bulls in the rodeo?
Well, he was always a cowboy at heart. from the age of 2, I've got pictures of him in cowboy boots and a cowboy hat, even before that actually. So he has always been a country boy, liked country music, liked country stuff like that. And he had the opportunity in the Air Force. He was stationed at Ramstein Air Force Base for 2 years in Germany, and they had a rodeo team. And he had the opportunity to get on the bull riding team, which he did a couple times.
So when he was decided to make the jump to the Marine Corps, he was staff sergeant, correct?
He was E5 staff
So
sergeant.
what made him switch to be a Marine?
I think dedication. He always felt like he wasn't doing enough. Like, yes, he was loading planes and he was making them fly and doing the things he needed to do, but he just didn't feel like the Air Force had the dedication that the Marine Corps had, and he didn't feel like he was doing what he wanted to do for his country, and that was be on the ground. And
So when you go from being a staff sergeant in the Air Force, does he become a PFC in the Marine Corps?
he was a recruit at the Marine
Right.
Corps, the same as anything else.
Right,
Now,
he lost everything.
He lost
all rank. when
all
he
rank
went,
and all
right?
pay, yes.
A lot of people don't know that.
No, he
Yeah.
started at the bottom, just like he was 24 when he joined the Marine Corps. Yeah, and he started at the bottom like an 18-year-old out of high school.
Right, and I believe that the Marine Corps is like I think it's the only one that you can go backwards. Like if you're a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps and you switch to the Army or something,
Yeah.
you actually gain rank
Yeah.
and you move. So
But he did gain rank when he finished boot camp.
right.
He finished as a PFC, but as far as boot camp went,
I said boot camp wasn't easy for him, right? I mean, typically boot camp's 13 weeks, right?
yes, he ended up getting double viral pneumonia. He left in January. He left January 19th. We got a call the last weekend in February from a lieutenant down at Parris Island, and he had told us that Brandon had been taken to the hospital that day, that he had collapsed. And Brandon spent 4 days at Beaufort Naval Hospital and 6 weeks in the medic unit before his lungs were healed enough to go back into training. So it took him 21 weeks to get through boot camp.
Wow. When did he graduate?
He graduated on June the 3rd, 2005.
And you go to what, MOS school?
Well, he was home for 10-day boot camp leave.
Right.
Did a little bit of recruiting, so was home like an extra 10 days, I think. And then went to Camp Geiger to his MOS. Actually, you don't do that first. You go to Camp Geiger for your 30 days of combat training. Everybody does. It doesn't
Right.
matter what your MOS is. And then he went to his MOS training, which is Camp Pendleton.
And what was his MOS?
Amphibious assault vehicles.
And what exactly are those? Have you seen them? Those things are pretty. They look like tanks.
They look like a tank. Actually, I have a picture of this. Is just the top of it's Brandon, but it's the top of it, and they do land or water. They're seaworthy
Yeah,
and
it looks like
they're
it
desert
almost
worthy.
looks like a
But
tank.
it does look like a tank.
Right.
But they can swim.
Right. So when did he, leading up to him being deployed, after he graduated, how long was it after he graduated?
He
when was
graduated,
deployed to Iraq?
like I said, June the 3rd, 2005. Went immediately after his combat training to his MOS at Camp Pendleton. Was stationed at Camp Pendleton, which is in San Diego. And prior to deployment, they always go to the desert, 29 Homes, for training because it's most like the Middle East terrain. And he came home in the end of January of 2006 for his pre-deployment leave.
And how long was he home before he left? I remember so my brother's a Marine,
Mhm.
my brother-in-law is a Marine, my uncle's a Marine. So I remember when I was in high school, my brother-in-law went to Iraq. And I remember his first deployment, just the feelings leading up to it. Everybody's trying to be optimistic,
Mhm.
but you know what Marines do, and it's
Yeah.
one of those nerve-wracking times. What was it like leading up to, whether it's days, weeks? I don't know, maybe a month he had before. You guys knew before he left. What was it?
He knew he was deploying the end of March. He was home from the end of January he was home 10 days through February 9th. And it was try to get everything done, try to see everybody. It was always that way whenever he was home, even when he was in the Air Force. We used to have everybody come to us. We would have one big party so that he wasn't spread so thin trying to get to see everybody.
Mm-hmm.
He proposed to his girlfriend while he was home on that 10-day pre-deployment leave. When we dropped him off at the airport on February 9th, 2006, our emotions were raw. We thoroughly expected to see Brandon again, but we knew where he was going and what he was going to do. As a parent, you just don't, you think about it, but you don't let yourself go as far as to think he might not come back. I just couldn't let myself do that.
So he was deployed in February 2006.
He actually left the United States of America on March the 27th,
Okay.
2006.
And did you talk to him at all while he was there?
I spoke to him one time. He was able to call. He had taken some higher-ups down to a larger base south of where they were stationed. He was stationed in the Haditha Dam area, which is on the Euphrates River, and he drove some higher-ups down to Al-Assad, which was not that far, about an hour from where he was stationed. And he had some time while they were in a meeting and some time left on his card, and was able to get through to us. It was 6:30 in the morning. It was 3 days prior to his death, and he talked about the thing that he talked about the most during that 20-minute phone conversation with me was the kids there. Brandon has always loved kids. We used to fight over who was going to hold the baby if there was a baby in our presence. From the time he was little, he always loved kids, and he was telling us about the kids. And he said they come up when they're out on patrol. They would come up to them and say, "Mr. Give me, Mr. Give me." They knew 4 words: Mr., give me, and chocolate. And his heart went out to them in their depravity because they were poor and they didn't have the things that our kids take for granted. And he was telling me about this one little girl. I actually have her picture with me too. Her name was Raja, and he said, "Mom, I want to bring her home with me. She's just so, she stays in the back until everybody gets their, things that they give them. They give them candy, they gave them pencils, they gave them paper, whatever they had with them." And he said the one day they were talking and giving this stuff out to the kids, and a bug flew down his throat, and he took a couple of sips of his water and asked if anybody wanted it. He goes, "Mom, she's the only one that would take it after I drank out of it." And I think his purpose, he saw through the kids what their purpose was over there, that these kids weren't living in freedom, and he wanted to help them have that.
April 28th, 2006. What happened?
They were sent out to retrieve a disabled vehicle. They were sent out on patrol. There was 4 Humvees with the tow truck in the middle. So there was 2 tow truck and them. They went out. They got it. It was late at night. I think they were sent out at 11:30. They were sent out and had retrieved the vehicle. Were on their way back. Brandon was in the last Humvee in the line. There were 5 of them in the vehicle. The gunner and the driver survived, and the other 3, and I always say their names because I think it's important that people put names to death when it's something like that. Sergeant Ed Davis from Antioch, Illinois, and Sergeant Lee Mills from Brookville, Florida, and Brandon were all killed instantly. The driver...
They hit an IED.
They hit an IED. He thought it was dark, and he thought he saw something in the road and swerved to go around that, which is why everyone else missed it, because they were last in line. And Brandon was sitting in the back behind the driver's side, and that wheel hit the IED. And we were told that the explosion would amount to 2 5-ton bombs explosion. It was pretty massive. It sent the vehicle straight up in the air. It actually, centrifugal force held the turret, the gunner, in the turret. And the vehicle came down and actually landed on Brandon.
And when did you find out?
We found out, I left for work, I start work at 7:30, so I left about 7:20. And about 10 minutes of 8, my husband worked third shift, about 10 minutes of 8, he saw a Suburban unmarked pull into the end of our driveway, and it just stopped there for a couple minutes. He was actually on his way to the bank. And the doors opened, and two Marine Corps officers dressed in their Marine Corps clothes, their service outfits, in formation marched down the driveway, and Warren knew what they were going to tell us. They call you if you're injured, but they come visit you if there's a death. And he knew as soon as he opened the door what they were going to tell him. And when he came to school to get me, then they got the basics. And Warren said, I need to go tell my wife. And when he came to school to tell me, I said, how do you know? Maybe it's wrong. You know, you want to think this isn't happening to you. Maybe they got the wrong person. Maybe it really didn't happen. Brandon's going to walk through this door. He's going to call later. He's going to let us know that it was a mistake. And Warren pulled out the copy of Brandon's dog tags that they gave him when he asked that same question.
And you found out about, I guess, our Rotary Club through our flag project, right?
Yes.
Did you know what the flags were when you were driving down the road, or did you?
I didn't know they were from a Rotary Club flag project. I knew in my Gold Star Mother's heart what they represented. It was close to Memorial Day. It was a group of flags. It wasn't, one or two flags that people place in their yard or whatever. It wasn't, I knew it was a memorial. I knew that group of flags meant something. They meant people's names, and it was important for me to stop and thank you for doing that.
So I guess on behalf of our Rotary Club, me, my family, thank you to you. Thank you to your son. The legacy that your son has left, I think that you would be surprised maybe to hear that Brandon has touched as many people after he's passed as he did when he was here. I'll tell you that my wife and I pray for Brandon as well as active military people every single night. So a lot of that, a lot of his legacy, he's is living through his mom, and we greatly appreciate you taking the time to meet with us.
I appreciate what you do. When I speak about Brandon, and I've always said anytime, anywhere, any place, I'll share Brandon because he was passionate about serving. And when people get it, like you do with your flags, and I know that's not just something you do to get money. You do it because it's important to you. You realize heroes need to be recognized, and our heroes aren't the people that we're hearing about the news today. They are truly the men and women that are out there fighting for my freedom, and I don't ever take that for granted. And I have heard, and it does this Gold Star Mother's heart good, we have had many, many people say the same as you just did. Brandon is affecting as many people in his death as he did in his life. He
Absolutely.
was 25 years, 1 month, and 20 days of awesomeness, and I'm his mom, and I can say that, but when I hear people talk about him and what it means to them, as recent as yesterday, I got a Facebook message from someone that was in the Marine Corps, was in Iraq with Brandon, but not with Brandon. And he said, I never had the pleasure of meeting your son, but he said he was moved from where he was in Iraq over to the Haditha Dam area after the 3 were killed. And he said, I got to know Brandon through the eyes of the men who served with him. And he said, I will always honor and respect Brandon because I didn't know him in life, but I did get to know him. And we've had different people tell us what Brandon has meant to them. When he was in the sick bay boot camp, we got a letter from somebody that he was in there with, that he helped them get through a rough time. You know, who wants to spend 6 more weeks in boot camp? And this kid was discouraged, and Brandon's probably 5 years in the Air Force. They called him Pap, because he was older and had some experience, and but he helped this kid along, and we got a letter after Brandon died that expressed how much Brandon had helped him, and different people over the years have told us the honor and respect that they have for not just Brandon, but it's personal to us for Brandon.
Absolutely. But my last question to you is, how do you want Brandon to be remembered?
I want Brandon to be remembered for what he stood and died for. As a mother, I say, I'm afraid isn't the right word, but there aren't enough English words to be able to describe what's in our heart, losing Brandon. But I'm always afraid that people are going to forget Brandon. Not the awesome son that we know he was, but what he stood, what he lived for, what he died for. General George S. Patton once said, "It is foolish and wrong to mourn the men who died. Rather, we should thank God that such men lived." And that's the way Brandon would want to be remembered. You know, I know he was honored to serve. I know he was honored to die for his country. I know that. He said it. He said it many times over the course of the years that he served. I know he wouldn't have wanted to die anyway. So how I want him to be remembered, that he sacrificed his all for our freedom and was honored to do it.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you for
thank you
for asking me, and I hope you can chop that up and make some sense out of it.
Yes.
It doesn't ever, grief doesn't have an end. It doesn't.
Well, especially as a mom. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, last couple weeks ago was his birthday, March the 8th, and that's a tough day. March 27th is a tough day because you're thinking about him leaving, and we weren't there. Had I known that he wouldn't be coming back on his own 2 feet, I would have crawled to California to be there to say goodbye, but it makes us, and I've said this before when I speak about Brandon, you had flags posted in a corner, and Warren and I, my husband and I, have always been patriotic. 10 years ago, we were patriotic. 10 years ago, I probably would have stopped and said, "Hey, thanks for recognizing these people." Not with the passion that I do now, because when your son is brought home under one of those flags, it has a totally different meaning for you. It really does.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.